What's up, Tsla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall markets. I'm going to break down some big news that came out involving the US and China that's causing the market to gap down, how this could affect Tesla stock moving forward. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or use my QR code right over here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 for free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000 or more, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia plus a $100 cash reward. Deposits $10,000 or more to get $300 worth of Nvidia plus $100 as the cash reward. Or deposits $50,000 or more to get $1,000 of free Nvidia stock plus $100. You also qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash, and the offer ends very soon, so please use my link down below to sign up. Anyways, Tesla's not looking too good, guys. One of the problems I'm seeing is that we had a high at 480, and since then we've been making lower highs and lower lows over and over again. We need to take out 435 to continue to be bullish, and if we can't do that, there's going to be a risk of us continuing to fall all the way back down, especially as we still have that gap to fill down in the 390s. So you want to be very, very careful with Tesla stock. Tesla stock rebounded because we got Dan Ives saying some positive things about how Tesla has a lot of resilience despite the tensions involving China. And we ended up seeing some news about how Tesla is ramping up production for Q4 in China to get ready for this next quarter. Their sales are up about 25% in China, which is some good news, but we're going to see what happens. However, despite that, there was some negative news that came out. The USA and China on Tuesday began to charge additional port fees on ocean shipping firms that move everything from holiday toys to crude oil, making the high seas a key front in the trade war between the world's two largest economies. That is some big news that's come out. And what's happening is basically the trade war is becoming more and more intense because once again, China have repeated that they are going to vow retaliation against President Trump's 100% tariffs on China. And so far, we're not really seeing them back down. So this is some important news. So with what's going on right now, we're seeing tensions continuing to rise on both ends, and this is once again causing more fear for the markets and a big sell-off. Now, for today, we just have Bowman giving a speech, a couple of bill auctions, but then Jerome Powell does give a speech at 12:20 p.m. We'll see how he ends up addressing this and what that leads to. Besides that, we got the big bank earnings. The majority of them ended up beating expectations, such as JP Morgan. It had high amounts of trading revenue, and we saw a lot of growth that came out from BlackRock and Wells Fargo also beating expectations. However, as great as the big bank earnings were, it wasn't really enough to get the market to bounce much, and we're just going to have to focus more on what's happening with geopolitics. So for Tesla, I just want to remind everyone that we have that gap that's unfilled at 395. Tesla needs to get back above 431 if we reclaim that we're looking for 435. But if we can't hold above 431, there's going to be a risk of us returning down to fill this gap at 414. If that fails us, then we're looking for that move right back down like this. We're still looking a little bit more bearish now in Tesla because every time we pump, we just get rejected. And even today, as we pumped, we got rejected. So we will see, does Tesla kind of like push back up towards like the low 430s and then kind of turn down like this? Or do we just fail at 426 and start dumping to fill the gap? Either way, there is downside risk. In order to invalidate the downside risk, we have to get back above 435. So be careful with Tesla stock. On SPY, now I'm eyeing something very different. So I want to remind everyone that we essentially have this setup right here. There's a gap to fill back down to about 653. And if we lose 652, I think that we could revisit the lows from Friday or make new lows because this looks like a left shoulder ahead. And then this could be like a right shoulder now. And if we lose 652 on SPY, we could be dipping all the way down to 635 pretty quickly. So be very careful. There is still more downside risk, and it does not look like the sell-off is over quite yet. So please keep that in mind. So here are the levels. If SPY does not hold 655, then there's going to be a risk of us returning to 652. If 652 fails us, we could be dipping back down to 646. If we get back above 659, we could try to fill the gap back up to 662. As of right now, This looks like a head and shoulders to me, and there's downside risk. We'll see if we pop back up to fill the gap in the low 660s, but then either way, even if we pop a bit, there is still downside risk, in my opinion, for 652. And then if that fails us, we could be dipping lower, so be very careful. On the triple Q, we already came back up. We kind of wicked up and rejected again. So this also has a left shoulder, head and right shoulder. Our next target is going to be 585 in case we continue to fall. If that fails us, we could be dipping to the 560s. We need to hold above 601. If we don't, there's going to be a risk of 585 or below on the QQQ, so be very careful. On the IWM, we have resistance at 243. If it doesn't hold, we could be dipping all the way back down to fill this gap at 238. Once again, be very, very careful with the Russell. ES has a left shoulder, head and right shoulder like pattern. That could take us back down to the lows from Friday, so it still looks pretty weak. Same thing with NQ. We're barely at support at 24,600. We need to get back above 24,800. If not, we could be dipping to 24,200 or below, so there's downside risk. Google is also, sorry, not Google, Bitcoin. It's also rejecting. We did talk about how that was one of the possibilities, but now that it's making lower highs like this, there is a risk of retesting these lows at 108,000 or below. Nvda, this is also affected by this. There's like a head and shoulders like pattern. We need to get back above 188. If we can't, we're going to be at risk of 177 again. Aapl is showing weakness. We need to get back above 248 to 250. If not, we could be dipping to 244, if not the low 240s. For AMD is also rejecting right here. We also have a head and shoulders like pattern. We had a big chip deal that was signed, but be careful with this head and shoulders like pattern on AMD. We need to hold above 222. If not, we're at risk of 200 or below. So be careful. On Coinbase, we're making lower highs here. We need to bounce back up to 350. If not, I see 336 as our risk. Amazon's making lower highs here. There is a risk of us rejecting again on Amazon. When you really zoom out, we have a large head and shoulders like pattern. That could bring us back down to the lows in the 210s. Meta has support right here at 705, might bounce but before it continues to fall. And Google may also be dipping back down to fill this gap, so you want to be very, very careful. The VIX is starting to break out. This can be a sign it's going to go higher. It depends if it comes down to fill the gap or not, but overall, the VIX does look more bullish and the market does have downside risk. And last but not least, for Tesla, I'd be very careful with this head and shoulders like pattern. We might not be done with downside after all. There's two gaps now. There's one at 413. There's another one down here at 397. So be careful, guys. I thank you all so much for listening. And make sure you watch your levels just to be safe. But just know, like I said before, I'd be very, very careful with Tesla right now, looking at the current setup. If we could reclaim 335, then we're back to bullish. But if we can't get back above that, there is downside risk with the trade tensions between the US and China rising again. And this is still scaring the markets, just like how it did on Friday. It looks like we're not in the clear quite yet. And we're going to see how President Trump now responds to the new tensions. We'll give you guys more updates later on. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best and peace out.